Yeah.
But we'll see how that goes.
Well, I'm praying for you, dude.
T's and P's.
That's right, dude.
I took a lease out on your heart. I took a lease out on your heart. Can I at least have fun? Can I at least have fun? Can I at least have fun?
Welcome back, everybody. We are Rough Draft Research. You are the audience, and together we're on a quest for Dynasty Domination. How's it going over there, Daniel?
It's going okay. It's going pretty good. I think I'm excited to hit a series, the series. We're getting into a series here. But other than that, just existing, chilling out, hot as hell. How about you?
I feel that it's very hot over here as well. Speaking of series, as we all know, the Pacers
Oh
did not
no.
pull it out. That was
Poor
unfortunate.
choice of words.
Yeah,
Dude,
fun,
that
fun.
was heartbreaking.
That was
Good Lord.
heartbreaking. Halliburton going down like that was tough. That was really tough to
Respect to the
watch.
bench, though. They stepped up in a big way.
Yeah, they tried. Yeah, I mean, they definitely, I mean, we went and didn't go down uh passive, so that was nice. But hopefully he'll be able to come back and we'll be back. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about football. We are conveniently going to be talking about the Indy football team today.
Yay.
But if you've listened to us at all on on a regular basis, you know we're in our division preview window. So we're going to start hitting all the divisions leading up to the start of the NFL season, and we're going to start today with the AFC South. So this is just a run through of all the teams, some of our thoughts, and we are going to throw in an IDP player for each team that we're excited about. So that'll be a little bit of change up to the format. But with all that being said, Daniel, take us away. Who do you want to talk about?
Hmm. Well, for me, okay, first we have to introduce the division, my friend.
Okay.
My God, the AFC South.
Mm.
Beautiful place. Beautiful place. It's literally the least winning division in the entire NFL in 2024.
Hell yeah.
So that's rough. And it'll make sense when we get into the teams, but I think it's worth noting that there's one new coach this year in this
Hmm.
division, and with that in mind, the entire division combines for a head coaching experience of a total of 5 years
Hell yeah.
combined. So that's you got to come some slack for 2024. But really, honestly, it wasn't really a down year. It was kind of more of the same. So I hate to say it, but we're starting with the South because, you know, we gotta use them as a ramp up material to get to cruising altitude for those big name divisions. So
Fair
here we
enough.
go. But I'm going to start out with the Jags. And as I mentioned, they've got a new coach. They've got that new coach. It's Liam Cohen. He's entering after Doug Peterson's been dismissed. He had a pretty rough year. Jags went 4-13, and I think that Cohen he's got a lot of buzz, something to be excited about, especially with Trevor Lawrence. He was supposed to be like the new gold standard. The best prospect since Andrew Luck. And here we go with a career starting as 22 and 38 for games he started. So that's not great. So you got Cohen coming in. He's fresh off a single season as the offensive coordinator for Tampa Bay. And it feels like a good change considering what Tampa was doing last year. They were third most productive offense in yardage, fourth in scoring. And, while Cohen was technically reuniting with Baker Mayfield after spending a little time with him during his single season with the Rams as the OC, he made Baker the third most productive passer. And and this guy has a heck of an introduction, Liam Cohen. He was able to create the leading rookie rusher in Bucky Irving last year out of nowhere. So he had the 10th most rushing yards on the year. And so there's a lot of excitement coming with Cohen, even though his NFL experience is kind of short and spotty. Um, yeah, but I don't know. We'll talk more about Tampa Bay next week. I'll get back straight into the Jags, who did not have any of the sensational, metrics last year. They were 24th in yards and 30th in scoring. And Trevor Lawrence, their fearless leader, had a short 2024. He needed some surgery, shoulder surgery, on his non-throwing shoulder, and it limited him to 10 games. Looks like he's going to be in good shape. But if you got Cohen in there, and then now we're adding in Travis Hunter, it looks like things are going to hopefully give him the opportunity to prove himself and compete a little bit. He's had decent outings. 2023 was quarterback 8 for him. So that's his best on his career.
That's
And
surprising to me.
yeah, that he did that well once.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Honestly.
isn't that weird to think about?
Yeah.
But he wasn't overly impressive last year. But he was kind of tracking towards improvement. 3 of his last 5 games, he was top 10 last year. So the whole team had a down year, and I think they're primed for a bounce back. I mean,
Mhm.
let's be honest. Doug Peterson experiment after the Urban Meyer experience, it's just not really been an environment to be successful. So I'll say it. I think we're all thinking it, but as far as fantasy and NFL goes, it's like no more excuses for Trevor
Oh, for
Lawrence.
sure. Yeah.
So let's just let's just see what happens here. But that's pretty much all I got to say on the quarterback room. But getting into the running backs, um, dicey again, man. This team is just
Hmm.
rough. It's hard to get pumped about certain aspects of this team. But we've got Patrick McCarry, who's at right guard. He's coming over from Baltimore. That's pretty good rushing offensive line. So maybe he can bring a little action with him because they were 26 in rushing yards and 22nd in ground scoring last year. And with Travis Etienne, like we're doing very confusing things. I don't understand what happened in 2024. He was the RB3 in 2023, and then now he got out touched by Tank Bigsby. And even before the snaps went out the door, he never had a single week inside the top 20 as the lead rusher, and he finishes the PPR RB 35. So I think the worst part of it is that the efficiency last year was nearly identical to his running
Yeah.
back 3 year. The difference was that he had 12 touchdowns in 2023 and only 2 this past season.
That'll
So
do it.
yeah, it's like, okay, yeah, we're shifting away from you in the red zone, and apparently you weren't that good of a running back. You're just propped up by TDs, and we've seen that. I mean, it's going to happen again. It might even happen again on this episode as far as referencing team builds. But yeah, you got Tank Bigsby. He coming in on the 3rd year. He didn't have anything going on. Forgettable rookie year, and he popped up, had an RB1 week in week 5, and RB8 in week 7. And then he didn't crack the top 20 the rest of the year, but he actually ended up with a better finish on the year. PPR running back 32 and
Mm.
way better yards per carry than Etienne. He had 4.56, where Etienne had 3.7. So I don't really know what to think as far as like liking Tank Bigsby. It's never been my thing. But these guys don't really profile as bell cows at all to me. So I guess we're gonna probably just lean on the passing game if you're the Jags. I mean, the way this roster's being constructed right now. But you can tell that there's something a little shaky when you double dip on rookies in the running back game. So we got Bashul Tootin coming in out of Virginia Tech, and I know you're a big fan of his. A very explosive player. He was the kind of guy that on film he'd just like skip the first 5 yards and instantly be in the linebacker's face. Had the fastest 40 with the 4.32 out of all the running backs in this class. So
Mhm.
I think he'd carve out a good role here in this landing spot, considering the competition level is a little shaky. And then there's LaQuint Allen, who I hadn't really gotten into very much, but he was a Big Ten running back with Syracuse, or it's the ACC, my bad. Um, but he was kind of like I said he runs like a vampire because he's scared of daylight. You know what I mean? Like he was just unexpectedly getting, tackled, kind of touched out of
Yeah.
nowhere, stood upright big time. He didn't make our tournament, so it's kind of my first look at him. And I wasn't
Mhm.
that impressed. And then I look at the stats and it's like, okay, back to back 1,000-yard rushing years, combined for 25 touchdowns on the ground over those 2 years. And then he had over 100 receptions in the past 2 years. So he does have some skills as a pass catcher. But like I said, anything could happen in this running back room. So we'll
Mhm.
just stay tuned and see what happens. But really, I mean, it's all about the wide receiver action when it comes to Jacksonville. Like they're trying to prop up Trevor Lawrence, give him everything he could ever need to be happy. And they rebranded the whole situation. Key departures include Christian Kirk, Gabe Davis, Devin Duvernay. I'm throwing him in there, and then Evan Ingram, which was kind of a big shocker. But that's a lot of opportunity out there. It's 25% of the team's red zone targets, which was 19, and then 169% of the total targets, which was 32%. 169 total targets,
Oh,
32%. And that's a big number to be available,
yeah.
especially when you think about Brian Thomas, right? Potential superstar, second year wide out. He was vacuuming up 133 targets last year. So it's hard to envision that number going up too much, but it was impressive 100 or 1,282 yards, and he was third in the league. Obviously, led rookies. And that was Trevor Lawrence missing some time. So you could see Brian Thomas being a 150 target kind of guy, and just pairing him with, the new badass in the world, Travis Hunter. You know what I
Mm.
mean? The way this room is built right now, it's shaken out like Hunter's going to have to be a wideout first and a cornerback second, just because I don't believe they really have too much to back up Brian Thomas Jr.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean, it was cool when Brian Thomas Jr. was paired with Malik Neighbors, but Malik Neighbors like a rough, tough kind of receiver,
Mhm.
whereas I think Travis Hunter is more like a deep threat guy, and you can see that in his PFF stats. He was, pretty well rated on the deep ball, and then you've got Brian Thomas, who was second most in the league as far as deep targets last year. So these guys compete, and I'm not sure exactly how they're going to work out the possession receiver type role. Um, we'll see what happens though. They added Diami Brown, who doesn't really profile as that guy either. So it's kind of a bit of a wild card. Parker Washington's in there. He is kind of a gritty player, but he doesn't really have a ton of traction. So we're going to see what happens. But really, the interest lies in Britton Strange. I can't believe they kind of just went with this route as far as not filling that void with Evan Ingram, but that's all right, man. It's a great opportunity for him. He could really get in there. He had limited success. Like he managed 4 games with 5 or more targets last year, and in those 4 games, he was a top 10 tight end 3 times, and then
Oh,
he was tight end 17 in the other one. So when the volume was there, it was good. His most impressive game was Week 15 versus the Jets, where he had 12 targets, 11 catches, and 73 yards, no touchdowns, and it was a tight end 2 finish. And so that game represents 25% of his total career catches
wow.
after 2 years. And so if he can continue what he was doing there, I mean, he could be, some tight end gold factory here, but I don't really know. I think this is a transition year. I think they went a little too top heavy on this roster with Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter. I mean, that's beautiful. If you can make like this Cincy type situation where you just have two dynamic wide receivers and it just clicks, but you need to back it up a little bit. Um, but yeah, we'll see how they end up doing on the offensive side of the ball, the fantasy side of the ball. You mentioned we're going to do IDP. I got a stud here. I like Aluakon big time. Could be a Travis Hunter thing in IDP. That's definitely a cheat code. But after 3 straight years over 300 points, Aluakon missed 5 games last year, and it was in the middle of the season. But He still has 100% action packed, ready to rock. In this roster, I think he holds down a major role. He's only 29 years old. I think he's going to bounce back and just, continue kicking all the ass. So I got him locked in as a stud. I think he's going to lead this team in IDP points. And then I try to do a sleeper. I know that we've kind of talked about having a second guy and see how it shakes out, but this team was hard to find one. I just went with Tyson Campbell. He's 18% rostered,
Hmm.
and in his last full season, he had 180 points, and he's pretty good with the forced fumble numbers, and he's kind of a tough player on a team that needs a little bit in the secondary, a little juice. So I went with him. But yeah, I don't know, man. How do you love the Jags? You hate them?
I don't think they're going to be great this year. I think their offense will definitely should be more explosive, but I just kind of think they're fine. I think
Yep,
they'll finish like middle of the road. I mean, the Texans should win this division, but like potentially the Jags could push them for that unless the Colts get their quarterback situation figured out. I still think the Colts have a great roster
sure enough.
outside of that, which is, that's a huge deal. But I mean, yeah, like I'm not a big Trevor Lawrence guy.
He
I
doesn't make it easy to cheer for him.
No, and like, okay, we're gonna give him a new coach and see how he does, and this will be his what third coach, and um,
Five
hopefully he
years.
can get it together because I mean, it would be nice if we had more like stud quarterbacks. But I just feel like what's going to happen is they're going to be kind of middle of the road, and he's going to be kind of middle of the road again. I mean, we're talking about a guy that has never thrown. I mean, in a healthy season, he's only thrown 25 touchdowns max. Even that year that he was eighth, he had five rushing touchdowns, which helped that total quite a bit. So I don't know, man. Like
Yep. Say the
I'm
same thing about CJ Stroud.
for sure, for sure. I do think the addition of the addition of Travis Hunter with Brian Thomas Jr. should give him more options. I mean, when Brian Thomas Jr. first started going off, it's because Christian Kirk and him were doing well. Obviously, Christian Kirk went down, and that sucked. But Brian Thomas Jr. was able to keep it going. So I think the addition of Hunter is really going to help out Trevor Lawrence and probably Brian Thomas Jr. as well. Now, I do think they are going to want, with how much they traded to get Travis Hunter, I do think they're going to want to show him off. So I'm slightly concerned, like on the 10-point scale, like a two or a three. So not nothing crazy, but on the target percentage going down for Brian Thomas Jr. just because they're going to want to feature Travis Hunter quite a bit. Um, I I don't know how to feel about Brenton Strange. I mean, this is a guy that was a second round pick a couple years ago, and has looked okay. And they did let go of Evan Ingram. We've seen Trevor Lawrence use the tight end, so maybe this dude can pull it out. I just think I don't know. This offense seems a little spastic to me. It doesn't seem super put together. I mean, the running back room, they took two rookies in the draft and then brought in an undrafted free agent in Jaquindon Jackson. So you know they want to do something on the at the same time though. Travis Etienne's in his final year of his rookie deal, so I don't understand why you wouldn't just use him probably the most and then see what you got in these other guys. And like you said, like he was the RB3 2 years ago. And then obviously that was a huge benefit to having 12 touchdowns, but you put him in the position to get touchdowns and he did it. So like I don't know why you just stopped all of a sudden. Obviously he hasn't been that efficient of a runner. I mean his rookie year he was at 5 yards per carry, but less than four the past two seasons. So I get where I think it's just going to be a giant RBBC. And like that's not something you want to get invested in fantasy. But I do think this is a chance to get maybe Trevor Etienne like fairly cheap. And he might end up being the guy at least for this season. We'll see. As far as IDP goes, I kind of let you down. I only have one for each team. I'll try to come up with some on the spot, but my
Let
guy
me know
was
that too.
Travis Hunter. I think you're bang on with Aluakon. He's great. He's gonna vacuum up all the tackles that he can, like he always does. But in terms of if you can throw Travis Hunter into your wide
Oh yeah.
receiver spot, or sorry, your defensive back spot, and then he's scoring you wide receiver points at the same time, that's just too hard to ignore. So it's a little easy, like a little low hanging fruit there. But my I just think that's going to be such an advantage for anybody that was able to grab him in IDP leagues.
No, I couldn't agree more, man. He's definitely next level and a little bit jealous, man. Feel like could have, should have, didn't. I had a lot of capital and I like my draft, but I feel like, man, I could have, should have moved up on that guy. But
Yeah, I
hey,
mean the guy we that
let
drafted
the
him
chips fall.
in our IDP league currently has him sitting in his IDP spot.
Hmm.
So so
And
he's
he will always be there.
yeah, exactly. So now he's rolling out Olave, JSN, Drake London, Nico Collins, Justin Jefferson, and Travis Hunter,
Poverty.
which is just, it's absurd. I probably should have pushed for that pick when Danny put it on the block because I think that's going to be such an advantage. Anyway, yeah, I mean the Jags should be interesting. They should be better than they were last year, but I think their ceiling is like 10 wins maybe
Ugh.
at the most, and I'd probably put it closer to 9.
Hmm.
Like if they were 9.5, I'd have a hard time with that over under. But anyway, let's move on. I will tackle the Tennessee Titans. Obviously, biggest news for the Titans is that they took Cam Ward number one overall, and there is zero competition for him. So he is going to be the starter there, barring injury, for 17 games. We obviously don't know what we're going to get out of a rookie. We never do. They're super unpredictable, but we're going to see him a lot, which is important, especially in evaluating for a super flex league. I do think the Titans did a decent job of surrounding Ward with like weapons, not like crazy, crazy weapons. There's no like superstars on this offense, I don't think, but there are guys that I feel like will be reliable and will kind of put him in the a good position to develop as a rookie. My issue, however, is that the offensive line was ranked 28th by PFF by the end of the year. I mean, JC Latham looked pretty good at left tackle, and then Skoronski looked pretty good at guard. But other than that, they didn't really have much going for the offensive line. And then they paid Dan Moore, who allowed 12 sacks last season, to come in and be their right tackle. They paid him a boatload of money, where he was just has been and was last year either just average or below average. So I'm worried about Ward in terms of that. Now, Ward is a guy that we put him in that like flexible thrower, being able to move around, so maybe he can kind of compensate for that a little bit. But I do think the Titans, it's going to be rough for them to get going this year, so we may not get a perfect evaluation of Ward or these weapons, to be honest. But I am excited to see what we get out of him. I'm just not convinced that he'll be like if you're banking on taking him in a super flex and him being your guy, you're probably gonna have to wait till next year, in my opinion, at least. I just don't think this year he'll probably be like middle of the pack, maybe in the QB 20s is what I would assume. But who knows? I mean, if he comes out and plays like CJ Stroud did his rookie year, then all bets are off. You know what I mean? The Titans could be fighting for a playoff spot. Moving to the running back room, this one hurts. As you know, and most people that listen know that I was all in on Tajay Spears. I thought he'd be able to hold off Tony Pollard when they brought him in. I didn't really understand the signing of Tony Pollard. I at least thought it would be like a 50-50 split. It was closer to 60-40, and then Spears kind of missed 5 games, which, makes the carry and touch difference look way more massive than it really was. But 60-40 is still not where I want to be. That being said, Pollard is going to be 28 and Spears is only 23. We can maybe, if you're a Spears guy like me, you can hope for a changing of the guard. I'm not overly hopeful though. Somehow Spears' usage declined going from Derrick Henry, of all people, to Tony Pollard, which made no
Wow.
fucking sense to me whatsoever. Like you want to use this guy all the time, and especially in the receiving game when you have Derrick Henry, but then Tony Pollard comes in and you forget about him. Seemed weird to me. Maybe it was just the injuries he was dealing with. But even when Pollard wasn't on the field, Spears' production was like not amazing, like kind of nominal at best. Like he had one game where he had 20 carries and couldn't break 100 yards, and then another game where he was under 3 yards per carry. So that's not great, but he did have a decent receiving year. I do think he's maybe a little bit better of a receiver than Tony Pollard. Um, but I mean, Pollard just seemed to take that role. So unless there's a Pollard injury or he declines in a noticeable fashion, I think Spears is kind of a low end handcuff role right now, unfortunately. Whereas Pollard kind of has like a RB, I don't know, 20, maybe 15 upside at the highest, but I would say probably in the 20s. 20 to 25 is where I would throw slot him in. I do think there's going to be more attention focused on the passing game, so that could help Pollard or Spears out. But overall, I just think they're going to be fine, like a RB3 or something like that. Somebody to throw on your bench and throw in when you have bye weeks, hopefully. Moving on to the wide receiver room. The top two spots to me are really fairly locked up. I mean, you got Calvin Ridley's going to be the number one, and Tyler Lockett's going to be the second option. Ridley last season dealt with the sixth most inaccurate QB room per PFF. So hopefully Ward can improve that to some extent. Now there is a question mark about Ward's consistency accuracy wise, especially on the deep side, which could be a problem because Calvin Ridley for the Titans, his ADOT was 16 yards. So mostly just all deep passes. So if Ward is going to be a little more consistent, we could see some still inconsistency for Ridley in terms of the looks he's going to get downfield. Camp reports though for Ridley seem pretty good so far. Everyone's talking about how he's locked in. Um, I think the ceiling for Ridley is kind of the same as like Tony Pollard's, where it's like that wide receiver 25-ish range, maybe a little more if Cam Ward just really comes out, which makes him like a low end two at best for you. But that's still not, that's still fairly valuable, and you can get him on the cheap for most people. I mean, maybe some people that are excited about Cam Ward wouldn't want to give him up, but other than that, I think you can probably grab him for not that crazy of a value. So he could help you, especially on bye weeks and injuries. I think sliding him in, I think he'll have some good games. Um, Similar to that, I think Tyler Lockett will probably surprise people. I mean, he always has. It seems like every year we're saying that he's not going to be that good, and then he ends up being good. I mean, I think he has a very similar low ceiling to Ridley. I mean, like in the wide receiver 30s, maybe. So I'm not saying that he'll be that great, but I think people are kind of overlooking him. Another guy you could get for really cheap. I think he'll have some pop weeks. Um, because I mean, if Ridley's going to be that deep threat, they are going to need somebody kind of over the middle to take all the short game work, which Tyler Lockett's fairly good at. I mean, Tyler Lockett's great all over the field, but I think they could use that veteran presence to kind of eat over the middle. But then that wide receiver three spot is where it gets interesting. Van Jefferson's brought in. I think we've seen enough of Van Jefferson to know he's not holding that position for long. Maybe this year, and maybe we're too high on Alec Iomanner,
Right.
like we mentioned, and we probably got some L takes comments from uh,
Whoa. That was the L comment.
for part of it might have been the Io Manor in the starters, but I really do think he has a chance to at least fight for that wide receiver three position. I'm just kind of skeptical on how important that wide receiver three position is going to be in this offense, at least in year one. But we'll see. It all, I mean, again, it all comes back to Cam Ward. If Cam Ward comes out and is lightened up like he has been in camp, to be fair, then it all bets are off. These guys, all ceilings are all going to increase. But if he's like a average rookie, then I just think this is going to be a fairly um, unexciting fantasy option in terms of a team. Moving on to the tight end, Chigo Okonkwo seems to fit the Arroyo style of Ward's offense when he was in Miami. A faster receiving tight end. It did surprise me though. I was looking at Gunnar Helm. It continually surprised me that he had over 700 yards and seven touchdowns last season. He just seems fairly boring on tape and just kind of like a non-factor. But a guy that produced like that in college, like we're usually pretty excited about. So like, there's not an outside chance that he could maybe fight for this job. I mean, Chig is in his contract year, so I do think he's going to be fighting for it really hard and they're going to want to use him because why not? See if this is a guy that you can tie to your rookie quarterback going forward and give him that wide receiver option. And then even if Gunnar Helm does pop, there's no, I mean, why wouldn't you want to? Um, Especially when one's on a rookie deal. But I do think maybe a guy that we're not overly high on might end up showing out a little bit more than we thought. But I do think Chig is going to get, at least at the beginning of the year, unless he flames out, I think he's going to get a predominant amount of this work and be maybe relied on as a safety blanket for Ward. Getting into the IDP stuff, this was really hard. I mean, the Titans have a good secondary, but nobody really that I'm like crazy excited about. I mean, Armani Hooker, could be an option for you, but you know the defensive backs are so like up and down or whatever. So I wanted to go with a linebacker, but they got rid of stalwart Harold Landry, a guy I know you
Yeah,
love.
Harold Landry,
Um,
baby.
and they brought in a lot of guys that are in their late 20s and early 30s. There's no like big signing that gets me really excited. They did take a rookie at the spot that Landry played,
Yep.
Ola Dejo in the second round. So like that's a guy to keep your eye on. Sleeper right now has him listed as a defensive lineman though, so it's like hard to want to pick him up for that. If he gets that edge or dual typing, then that's a guy I would want to look at. But I ended up going with Cody Barton here.
Good choice.
Only rostered in 46% of IDP leagues on Sleeper.
Sleeper.
He did have 49 solo or 69 solo tackles last season. And he's projected as the starting middle linebacker. He may not have like tremendous upside for you, but I do think he's a guy that you can slide in and he's going to get consistent enough tackles and be around the ball enough that he can be relied on to kind of anchor your roster, maybe like one of your IDP flex spots, depending on how deep your league is. But I kind of think that just sums up the Titans to me, fantasy wise, this entire year is that I think they're all like solid to backup options, but like I wouldn't be mad if Calvin Ridley was like my third or fourth wide receiver that I wanted to think about relying on, or like my number one bench wide receiver. Same Tyler Lockett, if he's on my bench, I'm not gonna be mad. Tony Pollard, if he's my RB3, I'm good with that. If Chig is my tight end two, I'm okay at least seeing how that goes. And then Cody Barton, if I've got him on my IDP roster, like I'm fine with that as well. So it's just kind of like fine. Like I think they'll
Hmm.
they'll win like 5 to 6 games. They're in definitely in a rebuild. They got the quarterback they want, and like we've talked about all offseason, they invested in a bunch of weapons to try and see who kind of pops with Ward. But the issues with the offensive line and just the talent disparity, I think just has me not overly invested in this team.
Yeah, I think that's a safe spot. It's 3-win team, and they didn't fix that.
Yeah.
Um, if they make an improvement, like if they won 6 games, which
Yeah.
isn't happening, that would be like a miracle. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, it's a tough town, man. Probably they're just used to visiting fans all the time in Nashville, so. This is what they get, you know. I agree with you though. I definitely like the Cody Barton. I got a half an eye on Jeffrey Simmons.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm hoping that he can have a little more. He's like consistently productive, which is nice, especially at the D line position.
Hmm.
But he's not like popping off. But consistency is nice in IDP. That's kind of the wild card of IDP is the lack of consistency,
Yeah.
and I crave that. You know, a guy like Tyler Lockett is willing to produce that for you, you know, except for
Hmm.
that one time you need him to catch that touchdown in the end zone to get you in the playoffs.
Of
But then it
course.
was
Yeah.
actually JSN. So whatever, Tyler, whatever, man. Um, but yeah, man, I like what you're saying. Gunnar Helm, probably great. I'm not like, writing history, just speaking my mind and I'm not backing down. But Chig should be a great companion for Cam Ward. And really, Cam Ward is what is exciting about this team
Yeah.
because, it's like Tony Pollard. It's like a never say die thing. Like they need to replace him, but he's not giving up, and he's going to keep rolling. So there's some optimism to have there. Spears clearly is a player that has a lot of potential that may not really get a shine on an offense like this.
Hmm.
And then you got Ridley, which I'd trust Ridley in and out. He had like some weird years with the Jags, some bad red zone hands and stuff like that, but he's still a great wide receiver. So excited about that. Alec, I do think is going to end up being a starter by the end of the year, and Van Jefferson is probably going to get cut. Like Traylon Burks is the biggest like what
Oh,
if
I fucking
member
forgot
of
about
this
Trailer
wide
Park.
receiver room. Yeah, hey
Oh,
man, easy thing to do.
literally didn't even mention it.
I mean he's like the bust. Like he's the biggest bust of the last 5 years, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like him and Quentin Johnson can go fight it out for bust of the century. Maybe Henry Ruggs will come in and tell him what
Honestly,
really up. But
I don't think that's well, Henry Ruggs, that's tough.
I mean, yeah, it's a different. That wasn't even the last 5 years. I don't even know I brought that up.
Yeah,
He's trending
that
on sleeper though, so I don't know what's happening.
I think he's about to get released.
Sure, that
Yeah,
makes
so
sense,
that
but still,
but I don't think Quentin Johnson versus Traylon Burks is that hard. I think it's clearly Traylon Burks is the bigger bust. Like
yeah.
Quentin
But
Johnson, go ahead.
hear me out. What if Quentin Johnston had been drafted by the Titans?
I mean, he'd probably be that bad, but they didn't have to trade AJ Brown to get him.
That's true. Yeah, well, that was just bad. Yeah, so this team's in a tailspin. They had some good years, dude. They had like the
Yeah, yeah,
Tannehill
AFC
thing, and
Championship
Mariota
game.
was
Like,
cooking with gas. What the hell?
but I
Whatever,
mean,
man. They figured it out. It's not this year, but I do like Cam Ward, and I hope he can survive this offense for a year or two until, they get a bunch of first overall draft picks to help him out, because that's
yeah,
where they're headed.
for sure. Yeah.
Okay, do I
Well, you
green
wanna,
light?
yeah, you got the green light. Oh, I just want to
Okay.
say, Quentin Johnson last year has five more touchdowns than Traylon Burks has had in his entire career. So,
Is that a zero for Traylon?
no, he's got one.
Oh, good. That's good. That's good.
He's got one.
Maybe Van Jefferson is a threat, but no, Van, whatever,
Remember
dude.
when
All right.
people were taking Traylon Burks over Garrett Wilson because the Jets sucked? Wasn't that fun?
Well, the Jets do suck,
They do
but
suck, but
they're
Garrett
not
Wilson is
Titans
sick.
level. Yeah, they can represent the Titans are representing the bottom of the barrel pretty hard at the moment.
Yeah,
So,
that's fair. Anyway, I'll
well,
stop shitting on them. You want
yeah,
you
we
want to take
should,
us to the
right? We
Texans?
probably, yeah, I don't want any chippy comments this week, guys. No, I'm just joking. We love it, dude. I crave that shit. But speaking of love it, here we go. Going to Houston. Things are going good. D'Amico Ryans coming in back to back 10-win seasons. He's
Hell
doing it,
yeah,
man. Keeping it exciting down the stretch. I mean, seriously, back to back divisional round losses in the playoffs. Like, that's pretty good, man.
it's pretty good.
They're doing all right. So, but yeah, the main thing that jumps out for me on this team is kind of like a lack of departures in the skill positions. You
Mhm.
know, it's pretty stable when you look at it as far as what left. Very little. You had Stephon Diggs, who had a single season with them as only 8 games, a little bit of injury, and I don't think that his contributions were quite as irreplaceable as some of the Minnesota and Buffalo years. So I think
Definitely not.
replacing what he represented is something that they've pretty much already addressed, in my opinion. But when it comes to quantity, as far as the departures go, we got Diggs and Robert Woods, and you're looking at 94 targets for them. But you got to look at some other players in this conversation at this point right now when you're talking about replacing production from 2024. Obviously, mainly Tank Dell, who's kind of projected to not have a major role or possibly any role in 2025, which is a bummer because he kicked a ton of ass. But yeah, got injured, collided with his own player, pretty much roasted his knee. Lightweight dude, kind of was always worried. And then you got John Mechie, which I think we all know the story there. You know, he hasn't really taken off the way we'd hoped he would have coming out of Alabama, kind of kicking ass back in the day. But those two players combined for 118 targets. So all of this together were pretty much in the 220 targets in flux range. And that
Mhm.
is a pretty good chunk of change. And I think it's going to be split up well. You know, these people have done some wild things this off season, and I think it's kind of cool. We've got Nico Collins, right?
Yeah.
We all know the name. We love him. Um, Not really playing full seasons yet, Nico. You gotta figure that out. But in a 12 game season, he had 99 targets. And so I'm projecting him at 140 if we can get the full year. I think he's a locked in stud. The guy's got God level yards per catch. And I don't really know what to say about him. Like, I think I'm trying to visualize stacks. I want to like work in stacks for this process if I can. And I really struggled with this division for obvious reasons. Not a lot of screaming stacks coming out, but I want Nico and CJ to be like a top 10 stack in the league. So
Yeah.
I'm just gonna plant that comment in the air and hope it makes its way down to Houston. But yeah, I mean, other than that, as far as stability and contribution in the pass catching game coming from 2024, you got Dalton Schultz.
Hmm.
We've got back to back years with target numbers in the 80s, which is pretty good. While his yardage and TD numbers, you know, they held him outside of the top 15 tight ends for the first time in the past 5 years, kind of a dip on actual like efficiency and scoring. But he still has a major production. And I don't think we're ever going to see that like tight end three that he had at that breakout year in 2021. But I do think that he gets a lot of targets and he's going to be a solid tight end, not really a difference maker type, but really, the issue with that is the red zone. This team really just spreads the ball around too much in the red zone. Not too much, but like
Hmm.
they've got a lot of flavors. They like to spread the love. And to highlight that, I mean, Dalton Schultz only had 7 red zone targets last year, which was the same number as John Mechie and Joe Mixon. So it's hard for me to forecast like anything really improving for Schultz because he's kind of at the max of his utilization in this type of offense, and he's not getting those luxury targets in the red zone that you need to make a tight end really pop. So that's pretty much where it's at as far as returning pass catchers. But then we've got a ton of new blood to be excited about. Leading it off with Christian Kirk, who was picked up for a 2026 sixth round pick. And he struggled to play full season the past 2 years. But I will say, when he broke the wide receiver market a couple years ago, he actually delivered. Like
Hmm.
I don't think anyone remembers it correctly, but he delivered on that. His first year with the Jags was a wide receiver 11 in 2022.
Yeah.
And that was his best year to date. It was pretty remarkable. But for the most part, when available, he's been productive. He's put together 1,100 yards over 20 games in the past 2 seasons, which is pretty decent
Hmm.
considering he was on the Jags. And then we got a collarbone injury that, you know, cut him out of the end of 2024, but it's looking like he's good to go for training camp. So I think that he locks down the slot on this offense, which is kind of strange because I really want it to be the dude, the man, the third round rookie, Jalen Noel. He's a hot number out of Iowa State, man, and he was hitting 70 plus percent like every year in the slot. He's a slot to Molly, and I'm a huge fan of this dude. But for me, stabilizing vet presence of Christian Kirk offers a lot more to this offense. So I think it starts out like that. And if anything, we phase into Newell. But when you got back-to-back divisional losses, you want the vet presence. You want you want an X factor. You want a tide that rises all ships and whatnot. So I am leaning Kirk at the moment. But the main event of the offseason is the other Cyclone coming in at pick 34 with Jaden Higgins, dude. I mean, Higgins is the answer to the problem the Texans were trying to solve with Stephon big time.
Hmm.
And Stephon had 64 targets in 8 games. So I can easily project that to be a triple digit line that I think that Higgins walks straight into first year. So that's where I'm at with him. I got like big dreams for him, probably wide receiver 3 in redraft. So I'm kind of like leaning towards him in like the 8th round area of a redraft league at the moment. Pretty excited about the whole thing, but this is not without its confusion. And I'm doing this, I'm having fun running it backwards because I'm going to the running backs now. And Joe Mixon
Hmm.
here. This team, we've been talking about it for years. They were 12th in passing and 22nd in rushing. And we've always been like, hey, step up the run game, step up the run game. Different coaches, different situations, always the same situation as far as leaning on passing over running. So Mixon not getting a ton of rushing opportunities, although he is super productive and he's had some great years. Honestly, he's on a 4-year streak of over 240 points a season. And he slipped outside the top 15 for the first time when healthy since his rookie year. So I don't know. It's interesting that he's finding such good production. He's entering his age 28 season, but you have to be scared because he's got 40 touchdowns over the last 4 years, and you don't often see a vet threatened by a vet. But what happened is $2.5 million got the Texans Nick Chubb.
Hmm.
So when you look at this, obviously, I think Mixon's a big time lead back, and he has the fortunate ability to be a pretty decent pass catcher. He was the top 20 in targets for running backs around 50 last year, and Nick Chubb's never been that guy, so we don't have to be too scared about that. But one thing you do have to be a little frightened of is Mixon's over here with fourth in the league, 56 red zone carries last year. And he was followed by CJ Stroud, who had 7. So that's a huge monopoly on this team. The
Yeah.
likelihood of Chubb coming in and getting 20 of those is very high, in my opinion. So I don't see how Mixon can really sustain an effective, fantasy viability without those touchdowns. Like I said, 40 over 4 years, that's a pretty consistent thing that I think is going away um, for the most part. So I'm a little worried about that. He holds down the value as a starter for me, but he's not a league winner in this opinion. So I don't know, a little complicated with the Chubb ad. I think we were all kind of like pretty happy that Woody Marks got this landing spot. They're obviously ushering out Damian Pierce, in my opinion. So 4th round USC runner, Woody Marks, a little small, but he's got good vision and agility, kind of lacking true power. But I thought it was a good landing spot for him until Chubb comes in, and now it's kind of shut down any kind of upside for the rest of these guys. In my opinion, it could be that Chubb doesn't have it anymore. Like he's definitely past his prime. But I think that as a hammer in the red zone, he's got to have something left. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he has. I know you're a big Chubb guy. I don't know if you have any hope for him in this situation.
I should have worn my Chubb jersey, honestly.
I almost suspected you would.
I do I have a little bit of hope. I mean, it's tempered hope, like that just that you can stream him on some weeks potentially. I just want to see him finish his career looking good, to be honest. Like in terms of fantasy, I don't know. He's gonna die on my for the belt roster. That's one loyalty I can't break.
In
But
like 80 years. Okay, I got you.
yeah. But I don't know. This running back room, another committee to me. I
Yep.
mean, yeah, we want to say they're phasing out Damian Pierce, but I doubt they cut him. So I think they could potentially rock 4 running backs with Mixon, Chubb, Pierce, and Marks. Maybe not. Maybe they do cut Pierce. Who knows? But
Kind of like a Goomba Wallach a little bit.
yeah, so like they have, and then they have four more on their roster. So like
That's gross.
they're clearly trying to figure out what they want to do there. The running back room is a huge question mark. I'm with you though in terms of Joe Mixon probably not being that reliable of
Yeah,
a presence anymore. I do think he'll still get a bulk of the work.
sure enough.
But if you're gonna use Chubb, you use him
Goal
in the
line
red zone.
for
Yeah, like
sure.
he's made a career of scoring touchdowns. So um, I
Well,
do. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, if you want me to jump in, I got a little Stroud action for you.
Yeah, yeah, go
I'll
for
just give you the Chubb moment because I know he's your dude.
it.
But
True.
I don't know, man. So I'm thinking about it with the running and everything in Stroud, and you mentioned, that Trevor Lawrence had never been over 25
Hmm.
touchdowns, and that's a bad thing, right? And so I'm looking at Stroud, who had that really exciting rookie year, coming in with 23 touchdowns and only 5 interceptions, and that was like the magic, like low interception, get the Texans back on the map. And
Yeah.
then in the second year, it kind of slowed down, but it didn't slow down. It was 20 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. So the big jump in interceptions was the problem. And those numbers, 20 and 12, the exact same as Brock Purdy. And I think it's generally viewed as a down year for Purdy.
Hmm.
So I
Yeah.
don't know if people are saying that. I know they're second guessing Stroud as like the next dude to be. But I think that there's still some hope for him to get back to the good life. I mean, outside of the interceptions, all of his stats were pretty good, like completion percentage, bad throw number, turnover worthy plays. Like none of those changed very much. Really, the only thing that moved was he got sacked a ton. So
Yeah. Which they
that was
didn't
a problem.
really improve at all.
No, they brought in Lake and Tomlinson, which is a 33-year-old, $4 million. All right. And then they got Cam Robinson, which is $12
Yay.
million dollars. But so that's the whole left side of the line addressed. I don't know if it's effectively addressed, but they were 19th in PFF's offensive line ranking at the end of the season. So I think that, yeah, things have changed drastically for Stroud in the wide receiver room. And you got to just hope that this offense is moving fast enough that the O line doesn't have to give him too much time. But he was a
Yeah.
quarterback 11 and was a rookie, quarterback 18. And I think we all view him as a potential top 10 guy. So with the receiver additions, I want to see him make good on that personally. And then
Yeah.
IDP, obviously, stud for me is Will Anderson. It was
Yeah.
kind of a tough team because there's a lot of good players on this D'Amico Ryan's defense. So I'm in on that, but I don't know. He had 6 games over 16 points in the regular season, missed a little bit of time, but then in the two playoff games, he had 3.5 sacks combined. So he's like heating up and he rises to the occasion. He just feels like he's building to be a studly badass. And then I like linebacker Christian Harris quite a bit as a
Hmm.
sleeper.
Yeah.
He's rostered in 42% of leagues. And I don't know. He's a guy that only played 3 games last year, but he was really coming on strong. He's only going into his fourth season. So I don't know. He's a guy that I'm looking at, but that's the Texans for me.
Yeah, I like what you said. I mean, I kind of already hit the running back room, but the real juice of this team is that wide receiver core. I think they did a good job of investing for the future, but also the present. I'm with you on Christian Kirk. I think he'll have a good at least start to the year, but honestly, I think Jalen Noel is going to be like more of a year two guy,
Yeah,
where I do think he'll be awesome once he gets into that role. But I think Christian Kirk super cheap guy going late in drafts that you could grab and could surprise you if he still has the juice after the injury. But it was a collarbone. It's not like it was a knee or
right.
whatever. Tank Dell's obviously a huge question mark. If he can come back and be healthy and stay on the field, then he adds a dynamic part of that offense. I don't know that I'm going to take that risk, But I'm with you. I'm already kicking myself for drafting Luther Burden over Jaden Higgins in one of our
Yeah.
drafts. I'm very angry. I should have just taken Higgins. Feel like, I don't know, that was dumb. Because I think Higgins is going to roll in, just like you said, and be like a number two guy there. Stroud, I look to hopefully bounce back, but I mean, his issue was the pressure and not being able to handle it well last season, and I don't think they did enough to address it. So I could see that being a similar issue this year. So he kind of profiles to me as a middle of the road quarterback for year three. But hopefully they improve the line the next year, and then with all these weapons, uh, second years for Higgins and Knoll could really, really go off for him. Dalton Schultz, like you said, probably like a consistent presence, but nothing crazy special. And then yeah, Will Anderson, as far as the IDP guy, he had 12 sacks last season, which was seventh among edges according to PFF. But what's crazy is he did that on only 51 pressures, which was 25th in the
Wow.
league. And also he did that on only 365 pass rush snaps, which was 45th in the league
Good
for
Lord.
edges. So like this guy was just crazy efficient, and I feel like you got to start putting him on the field more. But now you could make the argument that maybe one of the reasons he's so efficient is because he's so fresh, and that rotation is good for him. But either way, I think he's going to be a stud. And I like your Christian Harris pick as well. So yeah, the Texans should win this division. They should be back in the playoffs again, even despite the offensive line woes. I don't know how far they get. I really, I always remind myself of how big of an offensive line stan I am when we do these divisional
Yeah.
round.
It
Uh,
makes a difference, don't it?
yeah, and people just overlook it a lot, and it's crazy to me. So, moving on though, we'll move on to the Colts. The Colts, the Colts, the Colts. Obviously, the most interesting quarterback battle in camp is going to be Richardson versus Daniel Jones. All the reports seem to indicate that Daniel Jones has a substantial lead already. Richardson's already hurt. He's already missing time. He will be back for camp. So that'll be interesting to see if he can kind of make up the difference there with his explosive. But it's all about him being consistent, not explosive. We all know he's explosive. We all know he can run, but it's the consistency and being able to throw the ball. Um, we have seen though, even when he's bad, Richardson can put up fantasy points. So again, if he were to ever improve, he could still be a game-changing threat. I don't think that's the most likely option at this point. Me personally, just because I invested so heavily in him, and I loved the combination of him and Shane Steichen. And Steichen apparently loved him coming out of the draft, so it just all fell apart. I don't think it's likely. I personally am holding out hope, but I don't think most people should. Um, so my question at that point is Daniel Jones, is this Daniel Jones' best team that he's ever played on, roster wise? Because you look at the Giants, and at least offensively, the Giants have had some good defenses. Arguably, that's what got him into the playoffs the year Daniel Jones went. Um, but he's never really had a great line with the Giants. And he's only really ever had like one-ish weapon, sometimes not even that. You look at Indy, they ranked 12th by the end of the year, according to PFF, in offensive line play. They did lose two starters, however, those were aging starters in Will Fries and Ryan Kelly, and they were replaced by third and fourth round picks last season. And say what you want about Chris Ballard and some of his picks, his offensive line picks have usually been pretty good. So hopefully they just slot in and at least have a similar level of efficiency as these two guys that are leaving. But it should be a still be a decent to good line, all things considered. And then you got Pittman and Downs and Alec Pierce, which I think is a good top three option at wide receiver. And then you add in Tyler Warren, which makes them a great receiving option. And then you got still, in my opinion, one of the best running backs in the league, Taylor coming out of the backfield to take pressure off you. So to me, like, could we see if it's Daniel Jones? Could we see like another top 10 QB year from him? Because we all remember the year he went to the playoffs, he was like what eighth or something. So I don't know. I think Daniel Jones is in a pretty good position here to uh, to have a good year and kind of prove that he still belongs in the NFL. And when you're not on an inept Giants roster, you
Oof.
can actually do stuff. So we'll see. I mean, calling the Colts that much better than the Giants may seem like a stretch, but I mean, at least offensively, I think their roster, top to bottom, is way better. Going into the RB room, I think Jonathan Taylor's set for a huge season, barring injuries, which has always been a nagging issue for him. Regardless of who's at quarterback, though, I think the Colts are going to want to help that quarterback with a consistent running game. And Jonathan Taylor, who missed 3 games last year and only had 136 yards receiving, was the RB12 still.
Wow.
His last 3 games of the season in PPR, he went for 39.8 points, 27.6 points, and 25 flat. So was just heating up and showing that he still is the guy. And I just think like as long as he stays healthy and if this offense can be consistent, which I do think the upside with Daniel Jones is lower. I don't think he takes you to places that Richardson could potentially take you, but obviously the floor is like through the fucking ground with Richardson. So it's this weird dichotomy where I think if Richardson were to be consistent enough to make this offense go, I think everyone would benefit from that. But I think they're all going to benefit from the higher floor of Daniel Jones as well. So I think I could see the Colts playmakers being like surprisingly good for you. On that note, though, I don't know that it'll be Michael Pittman. He to me looks
Oof.
like a wide receiver 3 or 4 at best at this point. He seemed inconsistent last season. I mean, you could say that for their whole offense, but like it just seems he seemed off. He seemed slower. He's 27 now. He just didn't seem like the player that we've seen. Now, again, maybe that was some of the inconsistencies of Richardson, but just he only had 3 games above 15 points last season in PPR. So to me, when I look at this wide receiver room, I think it's being turned over to Josh Downs. Downs missed 3 games last season and still had 8 games where he had 8 or more targets. And to me, if it is going to be Daniel Jones, which seems likely, we've seen him play with these premium slot short yardage guys. I mean, Daniel Jones has never had a season where he's had over or he's even had 7 yards per attempt. And to me, like you look at the guys he's had success with, it's Wandale Robinson, it's Darius Slayton, even Malik Neighbors, who is a incredible talent, only had a yards per target last season of 7 yards because a lot of it had to do with Daniel Jones at the beginning of the year. So to me, Downs kind of slides perfectly into what Daniel Jones wants to do. Even if it were Richardson, I still think Daniel Jones or Josh Downs is going to get a tremendous amount of targets in this offense. I feel like he can feast around the middle. Maybe he's not your touchdown guy, but in terms of PPR leagues, especially with Daniel Jones on the field, I think Josh Downs is going to be a guy that can absolutely anchor your like flex spot or potentially a wide receiver 2 spot. Like I'm pretty in on Downs. I was looking into all of our dynasty leagues trying to see how I could trade for him, and I just couldn't think of anything to do yet. But trust me, I would bite on him if I could. And then Alec Pierce, I mean, he's relegated to that like boomer bust deep threat, or if there's injuries, like he might do something. He weirdly seemed to have a better time with Richardson than some of the other guys. If I remember correctly, I could be wrong
Yeah.
about that, but
No,
um,
he was tied with Michael Thomas Jr. on the deep targets. Like,
yeah,
yeah, he was doing some weird stuff.
yeah. So Alec Pierce was a guy
Brian Thomas
um,
Jr.
I liked quite a bit. Not again, I always thought he would be like a rotational guy at best, but he was just a good, solid player. But tight end is where the only place that I would be worried could take some targets away from Josh Downs. Tyler Warren could end up being a safety blanket for Daniel Jones or Richardson, whoever it is. First of all, because he's an absolute stud. And secondly, and this is a little galaxy brainy, but there's new owners in Indy because obviously, unfortunately, Jim Irsay passed away.
Yeah.
Uh, and maybe these new owners, even though they are his daughters, do not have the same amount of leash for Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen as seemingly Irsay did, or at least for Chris Ballard. They need to prove something this year. And if you're going to punt on Anthony Richardson, you need to make your latest first round pick look like a stud. So I feel like they're going to try really, really hard to get him involved and feature him in this offense. And we saw in college, Warren was able to play all over the field and do all kinds of different stuff. So it seems to me likely that he's going to be featured a lot. The quarterback consistency is obviously going to be troublesome potentially. But again, if it's Jones, then I think we could have a situation where, like, again, maybe touchdowns aren't a thing, or like the upside isn't crazy. But I think the floor for Tyler Warren could be amazing. And it's also a position that the Colts have been trying to figure out for years. So I'm really in on Tyler Warren, as I have been all offseason. IDP wise, Latu was one of my favorite players coming out of the draft last season. I think he's super explosive. Obviously, had a fun story to get attached to, but he did not really have a great rookie year. Only 40 sack or 40. That would be incredible. Only 4 sacks and 39 pressures, which is not great. It was 47th among edge players in terms of pressures, but he did still have like a 72 overall pass rushing grade per PFF, which is above average. I think why I'm excited about him, I just think that second year leap for edge players is really good sometimes. But Lou Anarumo coming in as the new defensive coordinator is a guy that took Trey Hendrickson into having 17 sacks the past 2 years. Obviously, he got fired, but I think he was more scapegoated to the lack of defensive playmakers in Cincinnati. So to me, he seems like a massive upgrade on the defensive side of the ball. And I think he can help Latu take this second step and become a real impact for the Colts and maybe an impact for your IDP roster.
Wrong answer. Zaire Franklin.
Well, yeah.
Sorry. Let me say Michael Thomas Jr. again. But yeah, Lattes, dude, that's going to be a good one. It's like this whole defense is super exciting. I mean, honestly, there's studs everywhere. Nick Cross, dude, he's the difference maker at the DB position.
Brought in Cam Bynum.
Bynum. Yeah, they got Travarius Ward too, didn't they?
Yeah, yeah.
It's gonna be nasty. Like they're like, forget about quarterback. Like, good luck scoring against us.
Yeah.
We got a secondary that's gonna catch more touchdowns than our wide receiver room, which is pretty interesting. I mean, it's hard to think of Daniel Jones as a higher floor. Ugh. I don't know. Yeah, you're right. It's like there's a world where Richardson's just done, I guess. Just
Yeah.
kind of cooked. Poor dude. He threw just as many interceptions as CJ Stroud last year, and probably half the snaps. So
Yeah.
heartbreaker. Jonathan Taylor, like you're saying, he better light the world on fire. Just feels real for him. I don't know about the Pittman thing, dude. I got some faith for
Okay.
for Mr. Pittman. I don't think he's had a good shot at it, but he could be a guy that needs to eventually change teams to make something really go down. But I think he's got some juice. I like your Josh Downs. Is Adonai Mitchell just gone? He's a dead.
I mean, I was never super in on Adonai Mitchell
Yep.
anyway, but to me, like, I don't see the room for him, at least fantasy wise. Like, I just
Is it
think
Adoni? I don't know.
I think it was Adonai, right?
Who
I think
knows?
it was Adonai, whatever. With the running game that they're going to have, the inconsistent passers and not wanting to fully rely on either of these quarterbacks. And then you have Downs, you have Pittman, you have Pierce who showed it out, and then you
Yeah,
bring in Tyler Warren. Like, where does he fit in? Like, I just
you're
don't,
right.
I
So
don't see
I
it.
mean, is the move Tyler Warren just gets 130 targets as a rookie and then
That'd
we
be
move
awesome.
on? Yeah. All right. I'm down. Uh yeah, I don't know why. This division is like it's like a train wreck. You just can't look away. Car crash, whatever you want to say. Definitely the Colts and the Jags to me profile as like the most interesting teams because of I don't know. Because Houston is just cakewalking the division, and then Tennessee doesn't have the X factors to make an actual difference. Whereas, I mean, there's some mean players on the Jags and the Colts. They just need to be, you know, scripted into success
Yeah.
and stay healthy, especially with Taylor's situation. So I don't know. This division, man, we're gonna watch him play. Probably won't be too much prime time.
That's fair. I don't think it is. Well, that wraps it up. Do you want to do a quick run through of who we think is going to lead this division at each position?
Oh, yes, that was my suggestion, and I'm willing to do that. I think I want to say Cam Ward, but no, it's CJ Stroud,
CJ Stroud at quarterback. I agree. Yeah.
uh, Jonathan Taylor.
Jonathan Taylor at running back. I agree. This is where it gets interesting, the wide receivers. Um, I think it's easy to say Brian Thomas Jr. or Nico Collins.
Yeah, I
Nico
think if
needs to stay
Nico plays a
healthy.
full season,
I
yeah.
think it's Nico. Yeah, I agree.
And then I go Tyler Warren.
Me too. Me too.
Okay.
I'm not excited by any of these other tight ends. I think they all are pretty low ceiling guys, and then Tyler Warren could be a stud. So
All right. Well, I'm locking it in. One of these spreadsheets has a place for this. I'll find it eventually. All right. We'll have it locked in and then we can do some head-to-head division leader stuff in the future.
I'm down.
Woo!
That'll be fun. Well, hopefully you enjoyed that. We like this segment every year. It's fun to look at all the teams and get excited about the season forthcoming. But we are going to hit you with the NFC South next week, I believe.
Yeah.
So come back and join us. But until then, we've been Rough Draft Research. You've been the audience, and we'll see you next time.
Take care, everybody.
I took a leap